For anyone who's here, I'm literally just testing to see if this works. So if you're watching, just say what's up. Oh, sweet. What's up, Ivan? How's it going, man? Yeah, so I was gonna wait for a few more people to join, but my plan with these is I think I'm gonna do a lot more live streams. Yeah, I have a lot to talk about. Lots has changed in my career, my design journey. So what's up, guys? Wow, this is so cool. Know it's been a minute since I've made a video, so yeah, I just wanted to give a little update. But this is more or less just to change my. Oh, hey, yeah, thanks for saying that. Yeah, gonna get back to tutorials. It's been a pretty busy last, I want to say, 3 months in my life. Lots has been going on. I'm actually even moving next week, so had to pump the brakes a bit. I'm gonna give you guys a full update as to like what's been going on the channel. But yeah, I think this live format could be cool. Yeah, if you guys want tutorials or if you want to learn anything specific, feel free to drop in the chat. I'm interested to hear what you guys want. I know a lot of you guys are also asking about the UI animation course, which is almost done. So I got a lot of fun stuff on the way. But yeah, I'm not going to be on here too long right now. I really just wanted to see what the deal was and how many people would be down to join these. And it looks like not that many, but then again, I don't have too many followers right now. So, hey, man, thank you. I appreciate the kind words. But yeah, feel free to drop anything in the chat while I'm here. Oh, insights on design sprints. I like that one. Yeah, definitely learned a lot about the sprint process this year. Anything else? What's troubling you guys? I'd love to hear where you guys are at in your careers as well. Anything you guys working on that's fun, or anything you're struggling with? What exactly about the design sprint, Kushal, would you like to learn? Difficult working with Russian developers. You know, that's funny because yeah, I've been working with a startup here in Los Angeles, and the dev team is offshore. They're actually based in Belarus, and the time difference is pretty crazy. Luckily, like I haven't had to be too hands-on with them. My product manager is basically like the link between me and the dev team. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying. There are definitely some challenges, you know, especially with this COVID environment. You know, working remotely, figuring out ways to work collaboratively across different teams and different time zones. It's been a challenge, but totally feel you there. It's funny you brought that up. Covering grids / different types of layouts would be a cool vid idea. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think grids are one of those things. I think everyone just assumes that like as designers, we should just know how to use them. I think people who maybe study design or like go to school, like get a fine arts degree or something, they probably know a lot more about grids, but it actually took me a while to like grasp the concept of grids, especially when it comes to like responsive design. Grids become a lot more important. And I will say, like, you know, learning how to develop sites in Webflow has really helped my understanding of grids and like why we use them in the first place and how they can help when we're thinking about different screen sizes that we're designing for. But yeah, there's also the whole concept of like baseline grids, which I've talked a little bit about in some of my videos, but yeah, I can maybe go into more detail there. Would help if you could throw some, wait, did I miss one? Oh, user journey and customer journey maps. Yeah, it's funny, like I feel like, you know, as more and more people dive deeper into the UX process, a lot of times we try to stick to these like strict frameworks, or like we'll come out of like a design boot camp and like all these people are preaching all these like journey maps and empathy maps. And really at the end of the day, what these things are just kind of tools for your design team to help you understand your user. So yeah, call them what you want: journey maps, customer journey maps. Think of it just as another tool to use in your toolkit. And I can talk more a bit about those if you want. I have my own opinions about a lot of this stuff that I'll probably get into. I think there's a lot of like fluff these days when it comes to design. Especially like this human-centered design process. There's a lot of, sorry, my tea's boiling over there. It's making some noise. But yeah, I'll talk more about journey maps and like the whole end-to-end design process. It would help if you could throw some light on how to conduct a remote design sprint. Yes. I mean, that's definitely something I've had to learn how to do. I've had to facilitate a few. I don't know if I'd call them design sprints, but definitely like facilitating workshops in a remote environment. And there's definitely some tools that you guys probably are aware of, like Mural and Miro are two of the more popular ones. Even Figma, I've conducted workshops inside of Figma, which is pretty cool. Yeah, we're all just kind of doing what we can right now, which is interesting. You guys have any other questions while I'm here? Again, I'm not going to be on too long tonight. I really just wanted to test this format, and I don't even have my mic hooked up. I'm on my laptop. Like normally I'd be in my office, but I'm actually packing a lot of stuff up right now because I'm moving around the corner to a little bigger of a place. So my office setup is going to be a lot better. I'm going to have a lot better lighting. I'm going to do a lot more videos. So hang tight, guys. I know I haven't made a lot of videos recently, but I swear there's more coming. I also, I'm going through a bit of a career transition as well. So really excited to share what I've been up to. But yeah, any other questions or stuff you guys are dealing with? How can we generate ideas for a mobile app? So I'm assuming you mean just like from scratch, like personal projects, like maybe for your portfolio or something. The way I like to go about these personal projects and generating ideas is just to think of problems that you face in your everyday life. Because at the end of the day, as UX and product designers, that's really what we're doing. We're solving problems, right? So yeah, I mean, for a while, right, when I had no like agency experience or actual like UX experience at a company, it was more or less just thinking about problems in my life. Like maybe it was, how to reduce commute times to work or just like anything. And then try to think about how you can solve those digitally, through screen design. But like, get in the habit of never just jumping right into screen design. Especially if you guys are interviewing for roles at top design agencies, like they'll probably give you like some sort of whiteboarding test or take home assignment. And, you never want to just start designing because that is sort of that product thinking is what differentiates a UX or product designer from a graphic designer or just a visual designer. So you have to be thinking end to end, right? Like who are our users? What problem are we trying to solve? Who are our users? Who's our audience? What are their needs? What are their pain points? What are their goals? And then, you might not even know what product you're designing at first, right? You might not necessarily be designing an app. Maybe, once you ask some questions around like, what are the constraints, right? Like, what's the budget? What is the time frame here? Maybe the best solution is not a mobile app. Maybe it's a Google Doc, right? Or maybe it's like some other web solution. So take all these into account for sure. Congrats on the new office. Thank you, Gary. I'm about to start my UX job. Search for my first job in UX. I have little experience. Can you do more career videos? Yes, absolutely. And like I said, for those just joining, I'm actually starting a new job very soon, and I'm like so pumped about it. But it's been a pretty crazy journey. Some of these processes are getting pretty crazy. Like some include take-home tests, some include whiteboarding tests, some include both. Like some have gone on for like months and months. So it's been a process, but I definitely have a lot of insight here with regards to starting your first UX job and everything that goes into it. So yeah, more career videos on the way. I think one thing that I've learned to understand is sort of like the career progression in this field. I don't think that's something a lot of people talk about. So like, I feel like there's sort of two avenues, right? Once you become a product designer, and again, I'll make a separate video on all this, but there's sort of two avenues you can go. Like if you're someone like myself who I think always wants to be plugged into the actual design craft here. Like I love designing. Like I think I hit my flow states when I'm designing. It's the reason I got into this field in the first place. Left the consulting world because I hated PowerPoints and like Excel documents and everything. I liked solving problems creatively. So I think like no matter how far I progress in this field, I always want to be, working in Figma, doing creative work. Some projects are more creative naturally than others, but I think I always want to be plugged into that side of things. So that's like one path. And I guess like the pinnacle of that path is like a principal or a staff designer, where you really are you kind of have the final say on the actual product output. And then the other path is kind of the more managerial route. So like I've worked with some, product design managers who aren't necessarily, doing screen design or production screen design. They're really the ones sort of managing the designers and all the different work streams, and are sort of the link between the product and the client and the developers. So if you're more of like a people person, that's another avenue you want to go. And yeah, I definitely enjoy the managerial aspect, but like I said, I just enjoy designing so much. I want to make sure no matter where I end up, I want to stay plugged into the actual product design side. So thank you for your question, Culture Yourself. I have the same question that Jordan Wood asked about design handover process. Did I miss that? Oh, how do you go about collaboration with devs and clients? Personally, I use InVision to add comments. Yeah, I mean, Sketch and InVision was definitely, I would say, the industry standard for a long time. I think it's a really great tool. Another combination that some corporations use or startups use is Sketch and Zeppelin. Even Sketch and Abstract. There's like an inspect feature inside of Abstract now, but I think more and more design teams are realizing like you can do all this inside of Figma, and it's web-based and it's cross-platform. So I think you're going to start seeing, we're already seeing the shift. Like every major design team is pretty much navigating to or migrating to Figma for these very reasons. But yeah, that's usually the process. At a high level, like Figma is a great tool, but I think I could talk, for days about design systems and how we leverage design systems for a handoff process for both devs and designers. So I'll definitely do some more design system videos as well. Wow, got it about problem solving. What tools are best for prototyping? That's a funny one, because if you guys have watched my videos, you guys know I use a bunch of different tools. I think early in my career, I just became a bit of like a tool junkie. So I like tried them all. And what I've realized is like all of these tools I think are great in their own ways. A lot of them are very similar, but like I still have different, like in different scenarios, I'll pick one tool versus another, like for like very specific things. Like depends exactly what I'm prototyping to, right? If I just need to like show a developer what the user journey is through a product, I usually will just stay inside of Figma, because like you can do most of it inside of Figma. Granted, you can't add like any fancy animations, but most of the time, like you don't really need to show that. But if I need to show something that's very like animation heavy, like I'll either do it in InVision Studio or Principle if it's like a very specific interaction, or even After Effects if I just want to export like a pre-rendered video and send it off to a developer. That's something I'll do. So it really depends, and I'll talk more about like, this is part of my animation course, by the way. I'll talk a lot more in detail about which tools to use for which jobs. I've also been getting into a 3D animation this year. Quarantine was an excuse to learn a bit of 3D. So yeah, there are some scenarios in which I would use like a tool like Blender. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but I've been diving into Blender as well. Wow, thank you for all these questions, guys. I was not expecting this. What tool is best for prototyping? Yeah, Principle, I think. One thing I just noticed, Principle came out with a cloud version finally. I just saw on their Twitter they can finally push to the cloud, which is huge, because before the only way I could share my designs with the developers to either pre-render a video asset and send it to a developer, or they could download Principle themselves. But like if they don't want to pay for it, then they can only use like the there's like a Mac app thing that you can export and they can view it on their side. But now I think they're doing kind of like what InVision and proto-pie are doing, where you can just send a link to your work and they can like actually click through an interactive prototype. So that's huge, I think. One thing about Principle, though, it's still only Mac only. So there might be a constraint there as far as like the person designing in Principle. But as far as sharing it, I think anyone can view them now. My views about proto-pie. Yeah, I've been diving into proto-pie a lot this year. I think like as far as like what you can do in it, like the possibilities are endless. I still feel like the workflow is a little weird, because the one thing I don't like about proto-pie is you can't view all of your screens all at once. And that's something like me, it's just a personal preference thing. I like being able to see my entire work environment. And that's not really something you can do in proto-pie. That you kind of like, I'm not like too familiar with it, but the way it sort of works is like you can only view like one screen at once. And then if you want to like link to another screen, it's like on a whole separate page, which is like just a weird workflow. And maybe I'm just not used to it yet, but it's just different than what I'm used to. So I do know though, like if there's so much you can do in proto-pie, like you can add haptics and you can use like the built-in accelerometer of your phone, and like you can prototype on like other devices now. It's like pretty crazy stuff that you can do. So I'm going to try to dive deeper. I just haven't personally yet like found too many use cases just like for paying the extra whatever subscription fee that proto-pie costs. I think it's like $12 a month. So not that I can't afford it. It's just like if I don't necessarily have to use it, I'm not going to buy it until I really need to. Yeah, Figma for basic, Principle for advanced. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good workflow. And I think for like 99% of your like use cases, you'll be fine with that combination. One thing I do like about Principle, and one thing that I wish like InVision Studio had, is the ability to drag and drop videos and GIFs into your like pre-rendered stuff. Because sometimes like you're working with like video assets that you're trying to stitch together in your prototype. So fun fact, I was working with Frog, the design agency this year, on HBO Max, the streaming platform. And my task, they actually hit me up via YouTube, which is pretty crazy. They needed help prototyping this entire HBO Max experience because they were unveiling it at their big investor day, which is sort of like Apple's keynote. So you know how like Apple, like when they're revealing a new iPhone, they go on stage and like they unveil all the features. This is what they were doing with HBO Max. And of course, at the time, the product hadn't been developed at all yet. They just needed a completely interactive prototype that they could walk through on stage with like all the gestures built in. They wanted to be able to like talk to it as they're using it. So we had to create this really robust interactive prototype. And my job as the prototyper on this project was to kind of stitch together like pre-rendered assets from their motion designers. So some of them were made in like Cinema 4D and some of them were made in After Effects, like not necessarily like the type of UI animation you could do in Principle, but more like organic kind of like blobby shapes that you can really only do in After Effects. So we ended up using Principle to stitch together this really robust interactive prototype. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to grab some tea. I actually wasn't expecting this many people to be asking questions, but let me grab some tea. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Where did we leave off? Figma for basic, Principle for advanced. One last thing, please try to make an in-depth video on Figma tokens. Now, to be honest, I'm not really sure what that means. Do you mean like color tokens on the dev end? Like how, like I've sort of dealt with tokens with developers, but I'm not really too familiar with that concept. I'm so stoked for your animation course. Yeah, me too. And sorry, guys, I know it's taken forever. I just, life kind of happened, and with COVID and everything, it was had to take a little break on that. I had to do a super robust prototype, and it really got me interested in learning After Effects to bring things into higher fidelity, similar to what you described. Yeah, I mean, for a while I was like super anti After Effects just because I'm like so anti Adobe products. I think it's such a scam. The fact that they make you kind of buy everything for their subscription model. And like normally I would only use like 1 or 2 Adobe products, but typically if you're working for like a design agency or you have a design team, you'll probably have access to the Creative Cloud. So in that case, I guess it makes sense to learn it, like if you have it for free through work. But if you're a freelancer, like, I don't know, I would really try to avoid it at all costs. I think it's kind of messed up. And I feel like their products are super bloated, and I don't know. Although After Effects, like there's so much you can do in it. And, but like for most of the UI animation, like for most UI animation tasks, like you can get by with a Principle or InVision Studio, anything that has timeline control. That's kind of like the one kicker for me. Like that's what Figma's missing right now. So you can't really customize the timing between layers. But yeah, like you can pretty much do anything in After Effects. And the cool thing about After Effects is like you can keyframe literally any property. And they also have like a lot of built-in effects. So for like really like high impact visual moments, I think After Effects is great. But sometimes if you need to deliver like an interactive prototype, being able to render a video in After Effects, bring it into a prototype, and then send out a link to your prototype is a really cool cool workflow. I feel like I'm rambling. Hopefully this is valuable to you guys. Give a thumbs up in the chat if it is. I hate Adobe too. Yeah, but like there are some Adobe tools, like there just really isn't like a Photoshop replacement. Like I use Photoshop just enough. Like I cut out enough photos where it just makes sense for me to have Photoshop. Like I don't know if I'll ever fully leave the Creative Suite. It's also funny because I feel like I became a designer right after like the whole wave of Adobe. Like when I first learned about UI design, right? It was right when like Sketch was coming out, and it was around the time where all designers were like shifting from like the Creative Suite for web design and product design into Sketch. So I kind of like skipped learning all of the Adobe products, and I really haven't had much of a use for them, at least for like what I do. Like, because I'm first and foremost a UX product designer, so I'm not like first and foremost I'm thinking about like who is the user, what is the user's journey, what problem are we trying to solve, more so than the visuals. Although I've been on some roles where I'm more of a visual designer, so it is kind of interesting. But just because like first and foremost I'm a product designer, like I haven't really found too much of a use for any other tool than just like your main UI design tools. And then if I want to add another layer of fidelity or something with motion, I'll use like, you see what I do on this channel, like Principal or Flinto or Studio or whatever the right tool for the job is. What is the state of new morphism? Guys, like don't pay too much attention to all these like fads, because at the end of the day, like it kind of depends also who your client is, right? Especially if you work for an agency. Like a lot of times your client's going to have their own brand guidelines already. That's not to say you're stuck using them, but like if I were to go to like, I don't know, Facebook and say we want to make a new morphic Facebook, they're going to be like, this is stupid. So like what value does knowing it really learn? Also, I think new morphism, there's, I haven't really, I can't say personally that I've like used it too much, but I know it hasn't really tested well from an accessibility standpoint, which is becoming more and more important. So if you're actually shipping a real product, like you got to make sure you're checking all the boxes, and accessibility is hugely important. You want to make sure you're designing for everyone, not just your core user. So in that regard, I don't know if new morphism is here to stay. All these things are just fads at the end of the day. There's this new one going around. It's like glass morphism, which to me is just adding background blurs, and that's been around for like 5 years. So I think it's just like a way of like labeling these things. Don't pay too much attention to these fads. Think about, as UI UX designers, just get in the habit of thinking about like, why are we making these decisions, right? Like why, if you decide to make something new morphism, ask why. Like, why am I doing this? What value is it actually bringing to the user? How does it relate to the brand? Like, don't just do it for the sake of doing it. Like, of course you can do all the visual explorations you want, but you need to have some rationale for why you're doing these things. So I can't just say like new morphism is good or new morphism is bad. Oh, hey, this is a random stream. Yeah, John, I honestly just tried this because I hadn't done this format in the past, but I think it's something I want to explore. So I just wanted to make sure like, my audio quality was at least good enough. Like I said before, though, I'm not on my main like desk setup right now. I'm just using my laptop. By the way, I had to buy this new laptop because when I quit my job, which I'll talk about, I went to Costa Rica and it's so humid there. I brought my laptop, didn't even open it, but it was so humid that it like, I got water damage. So I had to buy a brand new laptop, which kind of sucks, but I got this new MacBook, so whatever. The thing that's missing in prototyping tools is having actions happen based on scroll. Principal drivers are awesome. Yeah, I agree. I would say when it comes to like anything scroll based, where I really need to like be able to feel what happens when I'm scrolling, like I still usually gravitate towards Principal just because of the driver window. But I know like you can do a lot of scroll based stuff and proto-pie. Like at the end of the day, like these are all just tools. So like, if you can find a way to do it in another tool, just do it. Usually you just have to do just enough to communicate the idea to a developer, usually. Like if you have a good front-end developer, like usually they'll get it, like they'll know what they're doing. Sorry. I use Affinity products. Yeah, I've heard good things about them. And I feel like, what is it? It's like Affinity Photo and what's their Illustrator equivalent? It's like the vector-based tool. I forget what it's called, but I think more or less if you know Photoshop and you know Illustrator, you could really easily pick up those, and those are not subscription-based. So yeah, new morphism is not accessibility friendly. So dying, yeah, it's fun. I agree, it's fun. And I was doing some work with Microsoft this year, and we actually it wasn't like a it was more just like creative work. Like it was like an RFP to basically win new work. That RFP means request for proposal. So like sometimes you're just trying to like wow the client and say like, here's what we could do if you throw a bunch of money at us. So yeah, we did some new morphs in there, but like I can't say it's like I wouldn't say it's like really worth your time learning it, to be honest. Can you make a video about how to prepare for UX interviews? Yes, that is actually on the to-do list. And I actually just went through like I probably had like 30 interviews in the last like month or so. I'll get more into the details, but short story is I took some time off. Luckily, basically all of last year, all of last year, I pretty much worked 3 full-time jobs at once, if you could believe it. I had my original job at my agency, and then, you know, me being someone who says yes to everything, I just took on a lot of work, and a lot of it was great. Like I learned a ton, worked with some amazing clients and really fun projects. But, you know, no matter how much you love this stuff, like you can only operate at a certain level for so long. And I eventually kind of burnt out a bit. So I needed to take some time off. But yeah, it kind of made me rethink like where I want to go with this, and like where I see myself helping a design team, and if I want to stay at an agency or go in-house. So I do have an update on all this, and I will talk more about the process and how to prepare for interviews. So really good question. Where am I? I just graduated from a UX UI bootcamp. Any tips on how to find a position as a junior designer? Yeah, it's funny. Someone on LinkedIn literally just messaged me like the same exact question. I think contrary to prior belief, or contrary to what they'll tell you in these boot camps, like I took a boot camp myself. I thought it was a good experience, but I think they emphasize the end-to-end design process, like because they want you to be aware of all of the different parts within the process, like everything from research all the way through visual design and implementation. But the reality is, like, if you're working for a company or you're working for an agency in particular, like it's very rare that you're going to be owning every single part of that process, right? Like typically, you'll be paired with a researcher, right? Who will sort of, or sometimes at some companies, they'll be called more of like a strategist, or even like a business analyst will be doing a lot of the upfront work that goes into the product design process. And your job mostly as a UI UX designer is going to be translating all of the insights from the research into screen design. So I think these boot camps, they tend to focus a little too, like they almost go a little too wide, in my opinion. So I think my advice for a junior designer, and this is going to get some heat if I were to say this not on stream, like if I were to say this publicly, I would recommend focusing more on visual design, just because I can't tell you how many portfolios I've seen with like people who just graduated boot camps who've, you know, learned everything from research to all the way through implementation. And I think they just have to like show their entire process just for the sake of showing it. It's like me as someone reading it, like, I don't really care that you know how to do a card sorting exercise. Like, I don't really care that you know how to do affinity mapping. I care more about like why you do this. Like, why did you do these things? Like, did you just do it just to fill up a space on a case study? Like, tell me about the insights that you actually learned. As long as there's like actual thought behind it, and you're not just doing these things for the sake of doing it to think you're going to impress someone at an agency, like they don't really care, to be honest. They care more about, you know, the rationale behind it. And they're also going to care a lot about your visual design, because the reality is entry-level designers and even all the way up through like senior designers are more or less the people who are going to be in charge of the actual screen design. Whereas like the leads on your team are going to be focusing more on like the end-to-end process. They're going to be the ones probably not as much concerned with like, you know, the pushing pixels in Figma, but they're going to be like the main communicator to the client. So they'll handle a lot of that stuff for you. You're more or less going to be doing a lot of production screen design. So I'd really focus on your UI design skills. And there's a lot of good ways to learn UI design skills. I've talked a bit about this on my channel. Obviously, watch my videos. But I will say that there are some courses you could take, but like look into like the human interface guidelines, look at material design guidelines, because more or less, if you're a product designer, you're going to be designing for iOS or Android most of the time. So they have guidelines in place, which they would prefer that you sort of follow more or less. That's not to say you can't push boundaries, but just become really familiar with like how to design for these different platforms and look into their spacing paradigms. Like, are they using a baseline grid of some sort? What is their type scale? Like, just so you start familiarizing yourself with like what font sizes generally work best on mobile screens versus desktop screens. Obviously, there's going to be some variability depending on the fonts you use and everything, but really cover the basics, right? Like, get decent at typography, get decent at spacing, get decent at color theory, because it's really easy for someone to tell if you're a junior designer, like just starting out, or if you're someone who's really taking the time to refine their visual design skill set. So yeah, I know it's a bit contrary. Like, you would think, I think coming out of these boot camps, you would think like these companies expect you to be like this amazing end-to-end designer, when in reality, like, they would much rather take someone with good visual design skills and have you learn the process on the job, because it's a lot harder to make up time as a visual designer. I think like it's almost a prerequisite that you have to have good visual design skills to land a job, in my opinion. At least when I look at candidates, and I know from experience, the top agencies, like, they expect you to have a certain baseline of visual design skill set. So hopefully that wasn't too controversial. And I'll talk more about that, but let's see. Where did I leave off? Affinity Design. Oh yeah, so Affinity Designer is the vector-based tool, like the Illustrator equivalent. Yeah, I want to look into those for sure. But again, tools are just tools, so don't get too caught up in these. Have you looked into Kite Compositor for UI animation? I want it to take off so bad. No, I actually haven't. I think I've heard of it, but I haven't actually dove into it. I struggle saying no to side projects too. Hey, look, it's a good problem to have, right? Especially in COVID, a lot of people would kill for work. So, and I will say, as new designers, like, say yes to everything, but don't burn out. Like, just be very aware of your time. Make sure it's not at the expense of your mental health and your mental sanity, because I've been on those projects, and it's not fun when you're working weekends and working all day. Like, no matter how much you love this stuff, like, you need to take care of yourself. My case studies are huge. I'm not sure if it'll hurt or help me. Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely merit to showing your entire process, but don't think that you need to show every single step. Like, I'd rather show me like what you're really good at, show me why you made certain decisions, but don't feel like you need to show like, you did an empathy map. Like, everyone's obsessed with all these maps these days, when at the end of the day, these are just ways of showing how you understand your user. So don't get too caught up in like, I don't know really what I'm trying to say, but like, don't feel like it's necessary to show every single thing you learn in a boot camp, because the reality is, like, once you start working for clients, like, a process sort of goes out the window. I mean, you're going to have some sort of process you follow, but it's never going to be as linear as it is in these boot camps. Like, sometimes you're going to be focused more on production wireframing, right? Or sometimes you're going to be focused more on solving a very specific problem where you might not necessarily be you might not have like an end-to-end approach like you normally would in a boot camp. I completely agree on focusing on visual design. Something I've been running into are folks who are great with all the sticky note exercises, but they're actually like, yeah, I mean, it's true. And, it's hard to say what's more important. Like, it also depends on like first of all, what role you're trying to land. And like, are you trying to brand yourself as a visual designer? Are you trying to brand yourself as an end-to-end designer, someone who can come in, like, look at the core problem here and think of a product or a solution to solve the problem? Like, what are you trying to convey? Are you an illustrator? Like, design is such a huge, there's so many different moving parts within a design process. So it kind of depends on what you're going for as well. But I agree. It's like, there's nothing worse than reading this like amazing, like robust case study, and like it shows your product thinking. And then like at the end of the day, the actual design output is kind of like mediocre. And I know maybe that's like the visual designer in me thinking, or sorry, the visual designer in me speaking right now, but it's like it's harder for a company to take a chance on you if you don't already have the visual design chops. As sad as that might be, they'd much rather you come in with a certain level of visual design skills, and you'll learn on the job. That's how you learn, especially if you're a junior designer. You're not going to be expected to know, the entire process front and back. Like, it takes time to really learn, how to approach certain types of problems. Lots of boot camps nowadays are teaching to just use UI kits, and that grinds my gears. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of UI kits, to be honest, but it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Like if I'm a junior designer trying to land a role, I probably would use a UI kit just because, like it's just less risky. Like why would you try to recreate the wheel when like, Apple and Google and some of these, major players have already, put in thousands of hours of researching like what works for users, what size a button should be. Like, why are you trying to recreate the wheel? I'm not saying you shouldn't push boundaries, and I'm huge on doing that through motion and like other prototyping explorations, but sometimes it's like you gotta prioritize your time as well. It seems like they are looking for a designer with all the experience in the world and almost want you to I feel you guys. I know it's tough. Like everyone's getting so greedy. And yeah, it also depends, right? Like where you're working, because if you're trying to land a lead design role at a startup or something, like say it's an early stage startup, you're going to be expected to own a lot more of the entire process. Like you're probably going to wear many different hats, versus if you're interviewing at like a big design agency or like a Google or a Facebook, like you're probably going to have more ability to specialize a bit. Cause like I said, like they're going to have dedicated data scientists and they'll have dedicated researchers. So you can sort of focus more on, potentially like screen design or something. This is actually really great advice. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I will say I've definitely learned a lot. I've had some of these opportunities that I've said yes to. I'm just, no matter how hard they were and how much time I had to spend on them, every single opportunity has taught me so much. So yeah, I feel like I'm able to speak to this at least somewhat. My opinion equals product thinking plus visual design is greater than UX exercises and low fidelity output. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, how do you define these things, right? Like, well, how do you define product thinking? But yeah, I'm going to talk more. I think I will say, if you're interviewing, having a few frameworks in mind, like how you go about solving problems is really important. Like showing that there's a method to the madness, right? Like if I were given like a design prompt, right, for like a take-home exercise, which I just had to complete a bunch of those, and I'll get into some of those details. I'm not sure how much I'm exactly allowed to say. I might have signed a few NDAs, but you definitely want to follow some sort of structured approach. And I'll talk more about like a framework that I used, but yeah, some level of product thinking and some idea of like how you got from point A to point B is going to be really important for you to illustrate. But and the other thing I want to say, like when it comes to your process, here's the thing: like when you're just shipping a product for a client, say you're working for an agency and your client is XYZ company, like the users of that product are never going to see your process, right? They're only going to see the tip of the iceberg, which is the actual interface. That's like what they're actually interacting with. Like they will never see the empathy map that you made, or like the customer journey map, these really robust pitch decks that you made. Like your user doesn't really give a shit about any of that. That's not to say it's not important, but your user doesn't care. So if you show me a case study with like these really robust, maps, empathy maps, sticky notes everywhere with no real like insights drawn from them, like how valuable is that to me as someone trying to hire you? Like if you do all this work and then the actual design output, like the thing the user is actually going to be using kind of sucks, or like, it's very generic, or it's been done before and it's nothing new or novel. Like, I don't know if I'm taking a chance on you as a candidate, and it's just the sad reality of it. I'm bombarding the channel with questions. I'm getting ghosted from a lot of recruiters because I don't have the 4+ years of experience. Yeah, I think I've seen both sides of that, because I've seen some people are really strict about years of experience, but the thing is, like, it depends where you, like, if you work at an agency, right? Like you might say in 1 year, you could potentially be working for like 4 different clients in 4 different industries for 4 completely different types of products, right? Like I'm getting a ton of experience in just that 1 year, versus if I worked in-house somewhere and maybe it's like a very slow moving industry or like a slow moving company, like I don't know how much I'm going to learn in that year. So don't get too bogged down in like at least I wouldn't get too bogged down in like the years of experience requirements, because it's all very subjective in my opinion. I've also applied to roles that require 8 years of experience, and I haven't been doing this all that long. Like I would say if you actually look at like total years, I've been officially a professional UX designer. It's only been like 3 years, but I've applied to roles where they require 8 years of experience. But I guess my work has been good enough where I at least get interviews, and so I wouldn't be scared to apply to those roles. But I do understand how it's frustrating. Like some of these companies are just getting so greedy. They want like 5 years of experience. They want you to know how to code, which is just so unnecessary. I've never had to code like in my entire like career as a designer. I've had to understand frameworks like when you're doing responsive design, like you have to understand like how things break from, desktop to tablet to mobile. So like having an understanding of how grids work, or having an understanding of like certain concepts like flexbox or like margin and padding and the box model, like these things can't hurt you, but I've never actually had to like physically code anything. So I don't know. How much visual design should we present in a case study? Yeah, I think it depends. I hate using that answer, but it does depend. I will say one strategy I like to use, like I think having a nice big hero image of your case study of the actual final design output is good, especially if it's a high quality image and like the design work is solid, because it will probably encourage me to want to keep reading just from the start. I think that's a good tactic. We're looking for a junior designer with 10 years of experience and also deep knowledge of technologies. Yeah, I mean, it is sad, right? I don't know if you guys follow, oh my God, is Maggie in here? Wait, I think my friend just texted me. My friend just texted me and saw that I'm live streaming. That's so funny. She's not watching though. Yeah, I don't know if you guys follow Pablo Stanley. You probably do. Like he was kind of the reason I started making videos. He has Sketch Together is his channel, and he did a little like, I think it's on his Instagram, and he literally did a little skit speaking to, we're looking for a junior designer with 10 years of experience, and his answer like to every single question was no, because I'm a junior designer. It's like, can you code? No, because I'm a junior designer. So definitely go watch that on his Instagram. Did I just walk into a class? Yeah, I swear I didn't like mean for this to be a class, but I really do appreciate all the questions I've been getting. That's why I use Webflow. Yeah, Webflow is a great tool. Of course, Webflow is kind of limited to the web, which is, I wouldn't say a shame, but it's like there's a time and place to use Webflow. It's not really too helpful when you're dealing with like native app design. But yeah, any other questions, guys? These are all great questions, and I know I just like skimmed over a bunch of really big topics just now, and I'll probably make these like separate videos once I get all settled into my new place. But anything else? Any other video topics you guys want me to cover? Do I happen to do portfolio reviews? Yeah, so no one responded when I posted on my community tab. I wanted people to send me their portfolios, and I'd be happy to review them like as a separate video. So if you guys want to send your portfolio, I'll write my email in the chat here. Did I spell that right? Yeah, feel free to send me reviews or your portfolio. Have I ever recruited for user research? If so, where is a good resource I can look? Yeah, no, I actually haven't. I will say like user research is one area. Like I feel like I probably worked a bit backwards than a lot of people trying to break into product design today. Like a lot of people, they're coming right out of boot camps and they probably have a more holistic understanding of the end-to-end design journey than I did initially. So my focus was on like visual design, prototyping early on. And then I kind of learned more about like the end-to-end process, which I think actually worked out in my favor, believe it or not, based on a lot of the things I just talked about. But yeah, I have not. I would recommend a book called, it's called About Face. It's kind of heavy, but it's, I just put it in the chat, is the name of the book. It's pretty heavy, but it kind of covers everything that goes into designing digital products. And it's, the There's this one college. What's it called? College. I think it's called CCA something arts, but it's based in San Francisco, and a lot of designers like go to this school and they have this curriculum and they end up at like the big tech companies and they pretty much learn from this textbook. And I've been diving into it recently. I was actually reading it a lot in preparation for a lot of my interviews, and it just kind of paints the entire picture. It's written by like people at really big tech companies who have led design teams. So worth looking into. It's kind of dense. So, definitely have your highlighter ready. And it's not something you just read once, but it's something I always have on my desk to kind of, yeah, there it is. California College of the Arts. That's what it's called. Yeah, that's kind of like a pipeline right into the Googles and the Facebooks of the world. But yeah, it's a great resource. They go into like user research a bit more. I will say, like, I'm never the one on my team like leading user research initiatives. I'm usually working with a researcher. Usually I'll kind of go to a researcher too, like, and I'll tell them things like, here's what I'm trying to figure out about my user because I want this research to influence my design. So without this research, I can't really come up with like the proper flow. So it's really helpful to work with, to like just kind of understand what a researcher should be trying to gain from their users. Where are you guys, if you don't mind, like, let me know where you're tuning in from. I'd be interested in hearing. I'm on the West Coast, by the way, for those who don't know. I'm in Los Angeles. Started off, yeah. Yeah, Nate, I think, honestly, based on like the reasons I just talked about, I think that might be kind of the new wave. Like just really refining your visual design skills, because I think that's what gets you in the door these days. It's like, it's having that baseline level of UI design skills, like where you could be ready to like design the final interface that would be dev ready. Seattle, Salt Lake City, nice. Chicago, India in the house. What's up, man? What time is it in India right now? More India. How do I feel about 3D and UI design? Example 3JS. That is so funny you just mentioned that, because the startup I was working for in LA, they're building this entire 3JS environment. I'm going to walk you through a case study that I did for them. I got to leverage some of my 3D skills on this project, so it was really fun. 3D is like a whole other world, though. Like quite literally. I don't know if you've seen like some of the interfaces of these 3D design tools, like Blender, which is what I use. It's definitely very steep learning curve, but there's so much you could do. The one challenge we were facing on this project, though, is going from Blender, which is the tool of choice we use, to an actual dev environment. There's no real like pipeline these days. We actually have a separate 3D guy like building a Blender to code and like pipeline, basically. Yeah, Spline I have seen. It looks really cool. Definitely more limited in what you can do, but like for basic like 3D shapes and stuff, I think there's a lot of cool potential. And the way you can go from Spline to a live environment seems really cool. Should I learn more animations with After Effects to present products? Yeah, I mean, After Effects, you can do pretty much anything in After Effects. I think generally for UI animation specifically, like it's probably overkill for most of the time. The one thing I do like about After Effects, though, like if I want to show something on my portfolio, I think After Effects is a great way. Like you can like pre-render an asset. You can completely control the timing of the interaction, right? Like you can control the swipe gestures. So I think like for final handoff of something, it is sort of a more polished, it could be like a more polished delivery. But like in my everyday workflow, if I'm just trying to validate an idea really quickly or share an idea with a developer, like you can get by just fine with like a UI animation tool like a Flinto, Principle, Studio. I'm trying to teach myself Blender and getting back into Touch Designer. I don't know what that is, but yeah, Blender's cool because it's free. So, and I think if you understand Blender, you could probably pick up any tool because that's probably as complicated as it'll get. Yeah, I will say After Effects for anything Lottie, which is usually like the format that developers prefer if you're going to have like little micro moments inside of your apps. Exporting as a Lottie file right from After Effects is a really, really good way to do that. Is InVision losing popularity to Figma? I'm assuming you mean InVision, like not Studio, but like the main prototyping platform. And I would probably say yes, just because everyone's switching from Sketch to Figma. So as a result, InVision is just becoming less valuable or needed. I know a lot of design teams are probably still really integrated with InVision and the design system manager. So it might be a little harder for them to switch right away, but everyone's going to Figma. And as someone who's like built design systems myself, the design system management in Figma is just so much better, in my opinion. Like you don't have to create like border styles and do all this extra work in Figma. Yeah, Figma's like pretty close to a perfect product design, in my opinion. Like it's a really great tool. Yeah, Figma's the best. I'm first team all Figma right now. Fun fact, I actually interviewed at Figma. Yeah, didn't take the job. I'll let you know what I'm doing soon. But yeah, anyone else got any questions? Any cool projects you're working on? Let's see if anyone sent me portfolio. No one sent me their portfolio to review yet. I'm literally offering free portfolio review advice, and you're not sending them. Is there an ETA for your course? I wish I could give you an ETA. I have like, I would say the actual content is almost done, but I want to, as far as like how I'm like delivering it, I haven't really, like, I'm not sure if I want to build something custom, like a custom like React app where, I don't know. I don't want to get too much in the details, but I would say, let me move apartments first. Let me get acclimated with my new role, get a sense of the roadmap, and then I will have a better idea. I know, and I apologize. This is taking way longer than I anticipated, but yeah, I needed to take some time off in general, just like from everything. I had to like literally force myself force myself to stop working for a bit. So yeah, that included the course. But yeah, I don't know if you guys filled out that survey that I like included in that video. Oh, wait, I just got an email. Hell yeah, John. Can't wait. A lot of you guys filled out the survey. So like enough of you want the course where it's definitely worth my time making it. So I'm really pumped about that. Now I need to make my portfolio. I've made it pretty far with just my dribble. Yeah, I mean, I think, dribble's an interesting one because I will say, I'm sure you guys are all aware, like there's just been this dribbleization of design in recent years where I think designers are getting the wrong idea that like product design equals what you see on Dribbble, and it's just not the case. Like what you see on Dribbble is the end result of usually entire design processes, but more often than not, actually, it's just visual explorations, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I think we as designers, like especially if we're posting on Dribbble, I think we have some sort of like responsibility to say like, hey, this is just a concept product, or at least, if you're going to use that as like your entry into a design company, like you have to have, I would definitely recommend having the case study to go along with it somewhere, whether that's your own portfolio site or like a Behance or something. Because usually you're going to have to be able to tell the story of like why you made these design decisions, right? Because that's what UXers do. We focus on the why. UI designers typically focus on the what, right? Although even UI designers should be asking why. That's one thing I preach a lot, right? It's like, why did you add this drop shadow? Or why did you put the button here? Why did you use a 2-column layout? Like you should always be asking why. But yeah, I think a lot of companies, like, especially like more entry level roles, like you probably could get by with just a Dribbble portfolio because like I said, I think junior designers and even, senior design positions, especially if there's a really big focus on UI visual design, like you can probably get by with just a Dribbble portfolio. Now I need to make my portfolio. Yeah. So John, thanks for sending your portfolio. If anyone else wants to send their portfolio, I'm happy to go through them on a video. That'll give me some more content to make. So I just redid my portfolio too. I don't know if I'm going to link it somewhere though. Like I'm happy with it, but I think I may have violated an NDA or two. So I'm not going to post that publicly until it's ready. Thank you so much for all the info. I had to leave for the night. Yeah, thanks for joining, man. I appreciate it. I didn't. This is really fun. I think I'm going to do this a lot more. I wasn't planning on. I wasn't really prepared to answer all these questions, but thank you. Yeah, no problem. I'll go for a bit longer. It's only 9 p.m. here, so why not? I'm a fan of Webflow, which is what I made my portfolio with. Yeah, I think Webflow is an awesome tool, and if nothing else, I think it's important for us designers to at least conceptually understand like front end frameworks. So being able to build your own portfolio site will just help you sort of speak the dev language, which is a really important skill to develop. I'm not saying you have to learn to code, but just like being able to say like to your developer, like, we're using a flex layout here or a grid layout or something. I think it's really, it's really helpful. Yeah, no problem, John. Happy to help. Hopefully one day I can do this YouTube thing full time. That's kind of the goal. I think I really enjoy helping other people, launch their careers in design. Because for me, like I didn't even know, like until recently, I didn't even like understand what UX was. I didn't even know there was like a career path for this, and it just so happened to be like the perfect career path. So it's really interesting navigating this path and helping others along the way. If you're not violating NDAs, did you really work at an agency? Yeah, it's kind of bullshit, right? It's like you spend months of your life grinding for this client, and then like you have nothing to show for it. So that's why even like my freelance work now, like I'm pretty selective about the clients I choose to work with, because if they're gonna, because besides the pay that you get, like the pay is great, but I really think you should have something to show for it at the end of the day. Like it's bullshit otherwise. Like why are you? I know it shouldn't just be about climbing the ladder, but I think it is important to be able to say like, here's what I did. Now, you don't need to have them public, but it's kind of just it just makes the process so much harder if you have to like send a PDF, when you're applying to a role. I just prefer to have everything hosted on my site. So smash that like button. Yeah, absolutely destroy that like button. Yeah, apparently that helps the channel grow. I think more so than that, I think it's more about watch time. So I never wanted to just like be in the position where though I'm just making videos that drag on just to get the watch time metrics satisfied. Yeah, we'll see though. I'd like to be at a point where I'm uploading at least once or twice a week. I think that's doable. It wasn't this year though. I was working, like I said, like 3 full-time jobs at once. So I just like didn't have any time. I'm not one to make excuses, but it just like wasn't humanly possible. I'll send my portfolio when I finish my website. Yeah, please do. Speaking of NDAs, how do you showcase projects that you've worked on that are full of them? Yeah, there's a few ways around it. I mean, I think the one most people do is they just password protect, but it's like, I don't know, it's another thing. Like if you're sending a link to your portfolio when you apply to a job and like you have to send a password, it's just like another step that makes them less likely to, it just makes their job harder, I think. So you didn't hear this from me, but I think it's better to just risk violating an NDA than to go through all these hoops. Just like if you're doing that, just make sure your portfolio is like not really accessible. Like you're not like showcasing on your LinkedIn or something. And then if you do get the job, like, password protected immediately after. That's just my 2 cents. I also don't want you guys get in trouble, like, or get sued or anything, but one other way is just to scrub everything, like make sure there's no branding, but come on, like, how are you going to do that? Like the brand extends throughout the whole product. It's not just like the logo, right? It's like, I could tell pretty easly if you're like an e-commerce site and you scrub the Amazon logo, but you still look like Amazon, like I'm going to know that's Amazon, So yeah, there are some workarounds. There's some good articles out there on how to do it, but yeah, you could change the name, or like say it's like maybe like Whole Foods is your client. Like you could say something like, I worked with the world's largest or the country's largest organic grocer, but like then you're just making me think of Whole Foods. So I don't know. But yeah, guys, it looks like we've been on for an hour. Happy to take any more questions if you have, but if not, I don't know, maybe we can do this more often, but Yeah, like I said, I'm going to put my email down in the chat one more time. If you guys have any portfolios that you want me to look at, I'm happy to do that. Sorry. But yeah, I promise the course is coming. I know you guys are waiting patiently. There's a lot of cool stuff I want to do with the course. Might even potentially do a few courses and a few different design tools, maybe even do like a branding course if that's something you guys are interested in, but we'll see where it goes. And I really it's hard for me to make any commitments right now until I understand what my work schedule is like, because I have to prioritize that. But yeah, any other questions before I log off? Going once, going twice. All right, guys. Well, thanks for hopping on. I know this wasn't really this is nothing formal here, but I'll try to do this more frequently. It looks like it, enough of you guys hopped on where it made it worth it. So hope you guys learned a bit, and keep the questions coming. Feel free to comment on any videos as well. That's where I usually get them. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good night.